Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to follow up on my colleague Senator Landrieu's question that was talking about how we're going to pay for this and the full cost. And I understand, Mr. McKay, you said that you would pay all viable claims. What are viable claims? Are you talking about a legal standard of whether you were found with gross negligence in the case?
No. Let me explain. What we've said is we want to be very responsive and direct with claims with people and businesses that are affected. We've been clear that we want to stand behind that. We mean it. That's our intent. The only reason we say legitimate is that claims have to have some basis, some substantiation. We've been clear about the $75 million that's not going to be a limit for this. And let me just tell you what we are paying. We've paid, I don't know the number as of this morning, but as of yesterday, it was closing on 1,000 claims, mostly fishermen who are out of work, mostly folks who don't have cash to make ends meet because they're out of work, and that's what we're trying to concentrate on right now. So I think we're being very responsive with that, and obviously we got to make sure that we keep getting better and better at it. But so far, I think we're meeting the local needs, and we'll go from there.
How are you determining a viable claim?
There's
Because I'm assuming a lot of the discussion this morning, or at least it sounds like, BP is saying maybe the fault lies with the rig operators, and Transocean is saying maybe the fault lies with improper cementing by Halliburton, and Halliburton seems to imply that Transocean may not have properly operated the drill fluid right. So is that an ongoing part of the discussion? Are you saying any legitimate claim in an incident to this will be paid by BP?
Yeah, let me be really clear. Liability, blame, fault, put it over here. We are a responsible party. Our obligation is to deal with the spill, clean it up, and make sure the impacts of that spill are compensated, and we are going to do that.
No matter if that's $14 billion?
I'm not going to speculate on numbers. All we've said is every legitimate claim and the full resources of BP are behind this.
Well, there is cost estimates by experts now that say it could be as high as $14 billion. So are you saying that BP will pay all claims that,
I'm
even
saying we will pay all legitimate claims, yes.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think that is the question before us. This is a panel and discussion about how we're going to move forward from this, and I think it reminds me of when we had in this very hearing, I guess you have this room for big investigative hearings, but the last time I think I was in here is when the Challenger blew up, and we had a big discussion about what were the faults behind the Challenger system, and we found out that there were system failures. Yes, there was a freezing of the temperature in the O-ring, but we found that there were many, many other problems that led to that, and I think that's what we're going to find here as well, that there is too cozy a relationship with MMS and the oversight, and that the industry and the oversight of the various things my colleagues have been talking about with the blowout preventers and other things, that there is much more oversight and detail that needs to be made here. But I think the question that's going to remain is how are we going to clean up $14 billion of oil spill, or whatever the number is, and that we really have an accounting here of how that is going to work, because we have to move forward with preserving that area. And so Mr. Newman or Mr. Pro, I don't know if you have any comments about that, because I definitely feel like the case for defense is being built here this morning.
I guess I would agree with the way Mr. McKay has characterized it. Liability and culpability and ultimate responsibility for the events that resulted in the incident are one thing, and responding to the economic impact of the event is another thing. And I think the way Senator Landrieu has explained it coincides with my understanding, which is that as the lease operator and the well owner, that falls on BP.
I would simply add that well owners, drilling contractors, and service providers like ourselves really do work very closely to try and create a safer environment to develop oil and gas resources, and it's in the interests of all of us and the industry in general and the nation's energy security that we learn from this and continue to take those learnings and build them into our future operating procedures and technology.
Well, for one opinion, what I've learned from this situation is I think it's time for us to diversify off of oil. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cantwell, did you have additional questions?
I did, Mr. Chairman. I know we're trying to wrap this up, but I wanted to go back to Mr. McKay if I could, because I think this issue of who pays for this cleanup is so critically important. And Mr. McKay, just going back to you, although happy to have the other witnesses chime in here, but it literally was just last year that the last parts of the Exxon Valdez cleanup were settled. I mean, it was a 20-year process, went all the way to the Supreme Court. So, Mr. McKay, are you saying you're going to avoid that by paying legitimate claims in advance? I know you can't stop anybody from suing you, but are you saying you're going to pay legitimate claims in advance of any court process?
We are paying legitimate claims right now, and so yes, I am. And obviously, we can't keep from being sued, but yes, we have said exactly what we mean. We're going to pay the legitimate claims.
Okay, so if it's a legitimate claim, a harm to the fishing industry, both short-term and long-term, you're going to pay.
We're going to pay all legitimate claims.
If it's an impact for business loss from tourism, you're going to pay.
We're going to pay all legitimate claims.
To state and local governments for lost tax revenue, you're going to pay.
Question mark.
Long-term damages to the Louisiana fishing industry and its brand.
I can't quantify or speculate on long term. I don't know how to define it.
Additional troubles from depleted fisheries to and their recovery.
We're going to pay all legitimate claims.
Shipping impacts.
Legitimate claims.
Impacts on further drilling operations. I'm talking about things now that were part of the Exxon Valdez. So I guess what I'm saying is I think the American people are most anxious about this. And I guess let me just go back. OPA 90 set into a framework, a process that basically said, here's the liability and here's the framework. So we obviously only have so much money in that. I know my colleagues think we're going to raise that, but to make that retroactive is nearly impossible. And so you're stepping up today at a hearing with probably the best advice money can buy behind you with PR and legal teams, and I'm sure they're saying, let's say that we're going to pay. And so I want to make sure that we really understand what you are saying you're going to be committed to today, because the long-term impacts of this is going to be for 20 years. And we cannot sustain this kind of behavior or cost, and I want to make sure that we're getting full answers to the coverage that you are really signing up for today.
I'm trying to give you as clear an answer as I possibly can. We are trying to be extremely responsive, expeditious, meet every responsibility we have as a responsible party, and that means pay all legitimate claims. And so that is our intent, and I can't speculate on every individual case, but I can tell you this is not about legal words. This is about getting it done and getting it done right.
I hope so. And impacts to the pristine beaches that we have in this area, those are legitimate claims?
Yes, as term, if it impacts the beaches and impacts commerce, yes.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I am one who hopes that we never get into this situation where now we're in some court debating about what is now a legitimate claim, because you're making a big presentation here that you are stepping up to these responsibilities, and I hope that is true. And I hope, Mr. Chairman, that we will also go back on the legislation we've already passed out of this committee that included an opening up further of the Gulf and pass legislation to reconsider that. I think this is clear evidence that the beaches of Destin don't need to be subject to any more oil spill threats in the future. I thank the chair.